time for you to be able to hear all the wisdom that Hildy has to offer. Raise your hand if you've been to one of her presentations before. Okay, good. Raise your hand if you've watched them on our YouTube. Good, excellent. So yeah, this is a wonderful topic, building responsibility and resiliency in your kids. Super important for their life, and she'll hopefully give us some great advice. So,
All right.
welcome, Hildy.
Thank you. And thank you for giving me the opportunity again to speak here today. I love the audience. They're very involved. My name is Hilde Gross. I'm the owner of Life Changing Solutions. I've been a family coach and stress anxiety relief specialist for more than 20 years now. Oh, it's been a long time. And I not only do like this work, I work with families individually as well, not just teaching workshops. Work with individuals, couples, lots of schools, big corporations like SDG&E. So I've been doing this for a very, very long time. My mission is to reach as many people as possible and help them to create more peace and harmony in their home. And my expertise and main focus is on, of course, parent education, positive discipline, effective communication, peaceful conflict resolution, reduction of stress and anxiety, and overall well-being. And my services, besides, speaking, I also offer in-home services. So if anybody, feels kind of like struggling or would like for me to come to their home, I'm happy to do that. Also over the phone, Zoom. So there's a lot of options. Or in general, if you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact me, even after this presentation. And make sure you sign in. I frequently write interesting articles about parenting or of other events. So if you want to be on my email list, just make sure you sign in. I'm also offering, I passed out like a yellow flyer. If you like the content here today and you like to learn more, I have a 2-4-week online parenting seminars coming up. So, and if, let's say you and your husband or your partner can't attend both of you, and we can record it. So there's a lot of options. So just let me know if you want to move on forward a little bit after this. I know you will have a lot of questions, and I will try my best to answer them all. What I usually ask the audience is try to keep them to the end. And so I want you to get the most out of this, out of what I'm speaking today. And of course, if you don't understand something I'm saying, because with my German accents, which is, crazy fan. But other than that, so it's good to keep them to the end. We have some extra time to do some question and answer session. This is actually a brand new topic. So I was writing an article about the consequences of overparenting not too long ago, and I had a huge response from schools actually. And they said like, wow, can you talk about this topic? I've been talking about it in my practice a lot and helping people what to do, not to do so much for their children. But so this is something completely new, and I have other workshops coming up at different schools. It's just amazing what I noticed over the past 20 years in practicing and guiding parents. I see this actually one of the major problems is, and what we don't really realize, how much we're doing for our children. Actually, I would say we do too much for them. And not even becoming aware of it. Just a simple example. See, like kids, how many of your kids say sometimes, I'm bored? There you go. And what do you do then? Keep them busy. Keep them busy. Make suggestions, right? So when you make suggestions to your kids, who solves the problem? You do. So that's where the problem starts, right? If you constantly tell them how to do it, what to do, and solve their problems, what are they learning?
Not that.
They actually learn something. Somebody else will take care of my problems. And they become dependent. Imagine now what I also notice is, and I was guilty of that too, we don't look at the big picture. Every time, what I learned when I studied this was I was actually taking care of foster children. And even though with my background in psychology, I felt very challenged, couldn't get their cooperation. Parent education is a different field. So what I started doing is I started asking myself, what is this child learning by my response? How do I see this child as an adult? Because how many of you feel sometimes the way you were parenting has affected you now into adulthood? How many of you? Lots of them. I think all of us, one or the other time, we notice that. So we have to be conscious of that, because you only get that job once, right? Once your kids are adults. I'm not saying we cannot relearn it. Everything can be reprogrammed, but it's so hard. And I've been personally all my life trying to redirect myself, reprogramming myself. It's a lot of work. So you're sitting here today. Thank you so much. You can start early. What a gift for yourself and your children, because it not only when we overparent, it also overwhelms us. How many of you feel so, oh my God, I'm so tired. Yes, I'm so tired. But then, if we take a moment, and just reflect, what am I really doing here? What is my child learning? We want to keep giving children one responsibility after another. When they're old enough to do a certain task, give it to them. I know sometimes it takes a little longer to do that, but it's well worth it. Maybe takes a few more minutes in the beginning, but look at the big picture. Experts actually say 5 minutes of prevention saves you 15 minutes of turmoil. Add up those extra 10 minutes, day in and day out. Wouldn't it be nice to spend that time and take care of ourselves? Or spend some quality time instead of nagging and solving problems for them. So there's a lot of benefits if we learn some tools. And I want you to go to your handout. And I'd like to read some stuff with you, and then obviously give you some solutions to not being overly, just doing too much for your children. Says here, overparenting is a phenomenon that's becoming increasingly common, and it can have profound impact on how children grow up. Mental health professionals have observed that the rising rate of mental illness on campus with growing concerns. They've seen young patients with crippling anxiety, depression, bipolar, eating disorders, and even incidents of self-harm who have been unable to adapt to the demands of college life. They feel like, they can't keep up, they can't meet the demands when we do so much. It makes sense, right? So when parents overprotect or micromanage their kids, it can stifle their independence and decision-making skills. But let's take a look what other ways, what other characteristic behaviors they're going to develop by us doing too much for them. One of them, they become over-reliant on you. Because if we don't allow them to develop their own decision-making skills, again, look at this right now. Let's say you do everything, you make all the decisions for them. How will they grow up as an adult? They won't be able to make any decisions. I actually have a friend, and I was talking with her the other day about this topic because I was writing this new workshop. And she's one of them, whenever you go to a restaurant, she just cannot make up her mind. Sometimes it actually drives me crazy. Or then, when we go out, she doesn't know what to wear, and she calls me, it's like, really? And this is what's happening with your kids. So imagine someday, your kids are young now, so it's good, you can do something about it. But if there's an adult that call you for everything, oh, Mom, what should I wear for my job interview? Mom, I don't know how to cook a simple meal, what do I need? It's just very overbearing for you too, right? So our job as parents is really to work ourselves out of the job. And this is what I'm going to teach you today. And so let's see what we can do about it. Kind of like just simple things when they're young, let them decide what to wear, of course, within limits, but still, and some of you probably do this already, even if the colors don't match, it doesn't really matter. It's about them. They feel good about it, right? Or let them order at a restaurant within limits, of course. Or where and what time to do the homework. I remember one particular family, the 13-year-old daughter, the father, they were very wealthy parents, and he had this beautiful office. He was gone all day. He was a doctor, and he always kind of almost like forced. He said, you have to study in my office. Just kind of like, you have to do this and this and this and this and this because you're going to study better. He made decisions for her, right? And she said, like, she was really frustrated. She said, but Dad, I feel like, I study better when I just sit on my bed in my room. And, so you have to allow them to do certain things, what works best for them, as long as they do what you're asking them to do, right? And also let them figure out to keep themselves busy. When I was saying earlier, how many of your kids say sometimes I'm bored? Instead of telling them, you know what I say, even as young as a 3-year-old, what are you going to do about it? And let them figure it out. It will take a little longer. They might resist first. I remember a story, another family I was working with, their 3-year-old, all he could keep himself busy with was just watching TV. Mm-hmm. And so I was going, to the little boy and down in his level, and I needed some privacy with the parents. And I said, like, what do you think you could do the next 10 minutes to keep yourself busy? But I don't know. Then I said, so you know what? I'm sure you will figure this out. I have faith in you. And then walk away. Don't stand there. And even if they resist something, let them figure it out. You can always help a little bit, depending on their age, of course. They need our help. But in general, please give them a chance to figure this out. I never forget, all of a sudden, he's like, a couple minutes later, he's like, oh, I think I could go to my room and play. I said, that's a great idea. And after 10 minutes, let us know what you played with. And he was so proud, he was so excited. He was running out of his room after 10 minutes and was just really happy about this, that he made his own decision to figure this out. The other one, what can happen, the consequence is seeking constant validation. Why is that? So it's like when parents always praise achievements, even the smallest ones, children become dependent on their approval to feel successful or worthy. This translates into doubting their abilities and always seeking approval from others, even into adulthood. Children feel like a failure if they don't get perfect grades. They become scared of letting their parents down. Their expectations will become the child's expectation, and they're constantly seeking their parents' validation. Isn't that sad? And again, we're often not aware of that we actually do this. We mean well, right? We're all used to praise. And initially it feels really, really good. And it's not only maybe just praising them too much, it's also what words do we use? Are we using praise? Are we using encouragement? And I'd like to give you a little example of that. I'm just going to take you as an example. You don't really have to do much. Just pretend you just drew, what's your name? Kimberly. Just pretend you drew a picture and just show me the picture, and I'm going to play the parent and just make some comments. Kimberly, this is such an awesome picture. Oh my God, this is the best picture I've ever seen. I'm so proud of you. How do you feel right now, Kimberly?
Oh, pretty good.
Great. Everybody else? Feels really good, right? Initially, there's just one problem. And once in a while, there's no problem to do this. We all like to exaggerate sometimes. But who is doing all the talking here?
You are.
The parent. So where's the motivation coming from?
The
parent. So if I keep doing this, motivate the child, what's the child learning? Somebody else needs to motivate me. Somebody else always needs to, can you see like where this can end up? Mm-hmm. Children don't really learn to internally motivate themselves. Another message is in there, oh, you're the best. This is the best picture I've ever seen. The best. You want to focus on the effort, not like, oh, you the best. If children hear that, you the best all the time, puts a lot of pressure on them. Because they feel like they're only good enough if they perform the best. It puts high expectations on them. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. So, and the other one is, and I don't want to take this away from you, telling your children you're proud of them. But if you use this all the time, guess what happens? The child becomes dependent on again, what do you think is more important? Yes, we feel proud of our children, but don't you think for their own internal motivation it's more important that they tell themselves, I'm proud?
Mm-hmm.
So your children are young now. When they become older and we keep telling them, I'm so proud of you, again, they will look for outside sources. Somebody, again, has to be proud of them. They can be dependent. Can you see that? And if we say this all the time, we do become dependent. Our society is actually the majority. I don't know about you, but myself, I see this all the time. We constantly want somebody to make us feel good or motivate ourselves. And this is partially where that is coming from, not being aware of this. So there's a difference between praise and encouragement, actually. And I would like to share, I actually have a handout I want to just briefly touch on. And then you can kind of like look through this and read more when you get home. So maybe taking that example again with Kimberly, with the picture, how to do it differently. Would you mind kind of like pretending, showing me your picture again, Kimberly? I like those colors on those pictures, especially blue. Is blue your favorite color?
Yes,
Looks like you really enjoy drawing.
I do.
That's awesome. Makes you feel good?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I love to draw.
Yes, can see that. So can you see the difference?
Yeah.
So you see, like, do you actually feel like you internally motivating yourself to just look inside? It's like, oh yeah, I really enjoy drawing. It's my favorite color. So ask them questions instead of you doing all the talking. And that will motivate her to do better. Okay, so there's simple other, yes.
Can I just make a comment?
Sure.
And also to ask the child, like, how do you feel about it? Instead, because I think that's what we try to do all the time. It's like, what do you think? I don't know. What do you think about it? It's like,
Absolutely.
are you happy with it? Are you sad? Would you like the color?
Yeah.
And then if they say they like it, I'm like, well, good. Glad you like it. You should be proud of yourself.
Yeah.
Instead of it coming from you, because you don't want them thinking. The whole thing is about them thinking for themselves.
Yes. Yeah. And the copy, the handout I made for you, it gives you some examples in the middle of the page, and you see that. And one of them is actually, what do you think? How do you feel about it? So that gives you some examples you can just start practicing with. And always ask like open-ended questions instead of telling them. And that's also very, very helpful. And so encouragement in general, just to give you some tips about that, supposed to be specific, sincere, non-manipulative, and honest, and internally motivating. So these are the major ones. So as long as it's encouragement, it's a great way to encourage your children. And if you just want to catch them doing things well, be more specific. For example, thank you for helping me set the table, instead of just, you're such a good girl, or you're such a good girl. You know what they actually might hear? Those messages can be disheartening. You never know what your child is really thinking or feeling in this moment by what we are saying. When you say, you're such a good boy, they might hear like, oh, I'm really not a good boss. So we never know, so you want to be careful with the messages we give our children. Just see. It's the validation. The next one is, what it can cause is the feeling of struggling with failure. It says a common trait among children who are overparented is this deep-seated fear of failure. This fear often stems from parents who often step in to fix or shield their child from the consequences of their actions. If parents don't allow their children to fail, every minor setback feels like a catastrophe. Your children may find themselves avoiding situations where there's a chance they might fail because they never learned how to cope with failure. And some of you probably already do this. We also want to watch ourselves. What do we model when we fail, when we make a mistake? right? Because sometimes I see parents, they're very hard on themselves, so then the child will be very hard on themselves. So let them know it's okay to fail. Let them know it's okay to make a mistake. It's just a stepping stone for growth. Mistakes are there to learn. Okay? And then, of course, avoid fixing the problem. Ask them, kind of like let them be part of the solution. Don't give them all the solutions. For example, I see like when siblings fighting, what I see parents do a lot, they like go in there, and again, they solve the problem. You gotta do this, you gotta do this, and this, and this, and this. Again, who takes responsibility? It's the parent, right? Put it on them, but obviously we have to teach them. We have to give them some skills how to communicate with each other, right? It's both of them, like tell them like, okay, tell them, the other person you're complaining about, how you feel, what you want, and let the other child also say what they feel and what they want. And then guide them to solve their own problems. Could be win-win, could be an apology, whatever it is. But they do it in the moment. Sometimes it's very hard to do it because when they're fighting, when they're emotionally upset. So find time later and sit down. Otherwise, how are they going to learn to resolve conflicts peacefully? They're going to keep fighting. I used to fight most of my life, arguing. I was the master of it. Had no clue until I studied all this. And I always thought I'm right, too. It was the biggest challenge for me when I did a lot of personal growth. It's like when I studied parent education, they said like, well, just say to the other person you're right. And like, it just didn't sit right. I started out saying, I remember this, you might be right. So I gently kind of like, and today it doesn't really matter. Fights are really not about the issue anyways. They're about wanting to win. It's all about power. If we have time later, I'm going to explain a little more about the basic need for power and control. Another example is about failure. Let's say you have a 4-year-old and he skins his knee. And I see parents, we can be either too kind, we can be too firm, but we want to find kind of like the balance, right? So this 4-year-old's like, oh, and you as a parent could respond, so, oh, you poor thing, let me call grandma, or let me give you some ice cream. That would be too kind, right? What is a child learning? It helps to hurt myself, right? So they might become hypochondriacs. So we don't want to be too kind. We don't want to be too firm. I see this a lot with boys. Oh, this is not a big deal. Don't cry. What's the child learning now? Not to sharpen the muscle. Yeah. It's not validating his feelings, or makes you also learn, oh, I never can go to anyone and share how I feel. So we don't want to be too kind. We don't want to be too firm. So, for example, what you could do is with the 4-year-olds, like, oh, you know what? Why don't you get a Band-Aid? And I'll get the washcloth. Start involving them. Okay. So you don't do too much for them. Another example, now your children are a little older and they have a mean teacher. So they come home and like, oh, the teacher is so bad, I can't believe it. Again, there's like a difference between too kind, too firm. You say like, oh, you poor thing, I'm going to go to that school and talk to that teacher. It's child learning. Somebody else would solve my problem. The firm way is like, I can't believe you. What are you doing again in school? Right? So that it's not very effective either, because then they don't feel heard and understood. So if you just tell them, validation is always great. First step, always validate. I said, I can see you're really upset about it. Let's figure out what we're going to do about this. Depending on their age, maybe you can help them, you go with them. If they feel safer, but in general, by the time they're teenagers, you want them to be able to speak up themselves, but obviously in a respectful way. That's why it's so important to teach them those communication skills. And make sure you model those communication skills too. Right? Because if we don't have those communication skills, guess what the children are learning? Same thing. If we don't speak up in a respectful way, they're going to do the same thing. So it's very, very important. That's why I see, like, I have a lot of parents I work with. Often they send the child to therapy or something when there's a problem. But there's only so much a therapist can do with the child. It really takes the involvement with the parent. Because if the parents don't model those tools, if the parent don't understand what causes the child and then learn how to redirect it effectively, it's not going to be very successful. Can you see that? So the other example.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I've heard you say, can you see that a couple of times? Is that something we should start implementing? So it's like you're on the same page about things?
I just want to
like
make sure
natural.
you understand or maybe had your own
Yeah, like
experience.
should I do that with my children? Like
You can
see
ask them
that?
too, depending on the situation.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's really great. Start early to make them see like what consequence.
Mhm.
When they do this, it always has consequences,
Yeah,
right?
it's very engaging.
Absolutely. Yes. And you can, say the same thing as how do you think it's going to affect you if you respond or react in this way? What are the consequences? It's also a great way, instead of telling them to do what to do, is like, or solving the problems, they see for themselves, they learn how to problem solve themselves. Because once they understand what it can cause, then there's much likely they come up with a chance to think about it. I actually, just a couple days ago, I had this phone coaching session with a mom whose 14-year-old didn't want to take his ADHD medication anymore. And she felt like exhausted. She had to stand there in the morning with him, making sure he takes it. So she was kind of like on him all the time. And then I suggested to her, said, hey, take a good moment, have a talk, and share with him how you're worried, because she knows what happens if he doesn't take them. He really unfortunately had to take it. So she gave him already on the weekend, she gave him a break. So then I said, put the question on to him and say, I understand you don't want to take it because it has some side effects, but what do you think might happen? What could be the consequences? So ask them instead of you telling them. We constantly tell children, right? And they learn to think for themselves, it's much more effective. And when it comes from them, even when we're in general problem solving or being with a family, let them be part of conflict resolution. Because kids, we always tell them what to do, how to do. Did you know that kids get over 2,000 compliance requests daily? Then they come home, they don't want to listen to you anymore. And then we keep telling them again what to do. We have to become more creative. So, did it answer your question, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Or they forget their lunchbox. Instead of like they say, hey, Mom, I forget, and you running to the school and bring them the lunch, what are they learning? Let them experience, the consequence. If they're older and if there's school, I don't know, there's different situations. Some schools provide lunch, some don't, but if they can buy, let them buy their lunch with their allowance if they're hungry. That's how they learn, right? Instead of you coming just running to school every day and bring them the lunch. Did you have a question? Oh, okay. Okay, great. Let me see. Okay, let's go to the next one. Perfectionism. It's, by the way, it's the handout about the overparenting, the first handout. There's I think you have 2 pages of that, right? Just not to get confused. The first 2 pages, and on the second, it should be on this.
Difficulty setting boundaries.
Difficulty. Oh no, it must be second. It says perfection. You see the perfection? Is that the second or the third page? We just had struggle with failure. It's right below. You were on that page, struggle with failure, right?
Yeah, ours says difficulty setting boundaries. Next page.
Oh, that's at the very end. That's the last page. Go to the first page again. Very first page.
Yeah.
And go down. So it says over-reliance on parents, the one below seeking constant validation, right? Then struggle with failure, and below is perfectionism. Got it?
It just ends over there after struggle with failure. Looks like there's a gap page ends
Oh,
and then goes to the.
there's nothing about the pen down. Oh my God, there's one page missing.
Oh, I guess I have a page missing, sorry.
Whoops. No worries. Like, oh, okay.
I made a mistake.
It's okay to make mistakes. It's like, oh, okay, well, I'll just talk about it then.
See
And
the results already?
see, we can easily fix it. Mars is going to send you the other copy later. How's that? And I will just talk about it. So perfectionism, it's another thing, could be a consequence of overparenting. So it's like overparented children often struggle with perfectionism. This is because they're raised in an environment where mistakes are not tolerated and only the best is good enough. This can lead to a constant striving for perfection and a lack of risk-taking that can manifest into various aspects of a child's life, such as future career, relationships, and even mundane tasks. Children and or adults find themselves feeling very anxious or stressed if they can't meet the high standards they have set for themselves. While striving for excellence is not a bad thing, it's important to remember that nobody's perfect, right? So there's a lot of kids that feel like they always have to be the best. What they also might think is like, I'm not good enough unless I'm perfect. It's a terrible feeling to carry, and I was one of them. I was raised in Germany. Some people think like Germans, so they have to be perfect. We're actually known for that. So it just puts a lot of pressure on them. It took me many, many years to read. It's okay not having to be perfect. I'm good just the way I am. So watch your kids, they feel like, to let them know it's okay, number one, to make mistakes, and teach them to tell themselves, I'm okay just the way I am. Just rather guide them and teach them how to make up for the mistake. But they don't have to be perfect. And again, when we were talking about perfect encouragement, it says focus more on the effort. And I see this a lot, when parents do homework, they put so much pressure on the child instead of just finding what they already done well. This is one of my favorite examples, the philosophy I'm teaching is one of the educators and psychologists was Dr. Rudolf Dreikurs. He wrote a famous book in the 50s about democratic parenting, believe it or not, in the 50s, it was unheard of, called The Children the Challenge. And this one example, so there was this 6-year-old with a terrible penmanship. The parents have been nagging him, the teachers just could not get the cooperation. So Dreikurs goes into the classroom and walks over to this little boy, and he picks up his scribbles, and he looks at it and he said, this is a fine looking O right there. He just focuses on this one legible letter. Love that example. That's what encouragement means. So before you even criticize, or before you focus first on what they're already done well. And in general, catch them doing things well, of course, instead of criticizing and making them feel like they're not good enough if they don't perform perfectly. And then also, say like, use logical consequences instead of punishment. Some of you may not have heard about what logical consequences really mean, and if we have time at the end, I'd like to share a little more with you. But for example, the parents are used to more the way we were raised, threats. If you don't do this, you're not going to get this. Punishment, right? How many of you like to hear threats? You like somebody threatening you?
Oh, I thought you were asking if we do that.
No. Actually, how many like for somebody, if somebody threatens you, how does it make you feel? how does it make you, if somebody threatens me, I don't want to be cooperative, I'm just going, oh, you leave me alone, right? And children are not any different. Only because they are children. Who came up with a notion? In order for children to behave better, we must first make them feel worse. It's kind of sad when you think about it, right? It started a long time ago, and we're not here to blame anyone. Blame is not going to fix the problem. But we want to become aware of it, right? There's much better tools out there. For example, I remember this other family I was working with, the 4-year-old had, he loved his apple juice in the afternoon. And what he did, instead of putting the can in the trash, he just threw it in the living room. Very disrespectful. So the parents had these two parenting styles. One was too autocratic, the other one was too firm, too kind. And so he was just, oh my God, he was just running the household. And I was sitting there actually in the living room with the parents. They even had a baby. And he was just getting like a kick out of it, right? He's just grin on his face. How many of you have ever seen your kids having a grin on their face when they defy you? So what I did, I walked over to the little kid and I said to him, would you like to have apple juice tomorrow again? It was kind of like the routine every afternoon. And he says, yeah. I said, okay, I want you to have your apple juice tomorrow again. Well, we're going to give you apple juice again tomorrow if you take your can and put it into the trash. If you decide not to put it into the trash, there won't be any apple juice. It's your choice. You see the difference? There's no threat in there. You can actually turn every threat into a promise. We call them logical consequence. This is the logical consequence. Can you see it's related to the crime? Right? And I'm not saying, oh, if you don't put it in the trash, you're not going to watch TV tonight. That will create more resentment, more anger, and guess what? It does not teach a child to take responsibility for their own behavior, because who's in charge again? The parent, right? So in this way, where we give them a choice, we said, look, here's your choice. You can choose to put the empty can in the trash now, and then you can have apple juice tomorrow again. It's your choice. Can you see now you put the responsibility onto them? Huge difference. Did you know that punishment is actually another external motivation, like the praise? It maybe works for a while, but then how many of you feel sometimes punishment work and also not effective anymore, right? So use more logical consequences. I know we had another workshop about this one time, and we don't have the time to talk in detail about this today. But if we have a little more time, we can get into this later this morning. So we have to also hold them accountable. Because we have to hold them accountable. What I see a lot is we set boundaries, but then we don't follow through, right? What happens if we don't hold them accountable? No sense of responsibility, right? And look at our society. I think it's really sad what we see out there. There's so many people, and I feel like it's just getting worse and worse. Not just kids, adults too. There's no sense of accountability. It's always somebody else's fault. It's just always blaming. It's really sad. But you can avoid that by learning some new tools. So it takes us to the next one. It can create a lack of responsibility as well. Because if we don't give them, you don't have this on there. I'm going to let you know when we get to, okay, you have the page like lack of self-confidence or only the boundaries?
The boundaries.
The boundaries. Okay, so there's two more. So the other consequence is lack of responsibility, what I was just saying, if we don't hold them accountable. But first we have to set boundaries, right? I even see a lot of parents that sometimes don't even set boundaries. Children do need boundaries. It not only makes them feel safe and secure, it also makes them feel loved and cared for. But we have to follow through. I know it's difficult sometimes because if you find yourself repeating all the time and then, you get frustrated because whatever you've been trying in the past may not be effective. I can see how it's easy to give in. But I promise you, there's some amazing tools out there. And it's also learning how to set boundaries in a kind way, and then also follow through in a kind way. We do, unfortunately, most of us don't have that skill. All we do is like we're in a reactive environment. We just threaten, if you don't do this, you're not going to have this, or else, right? And nobody likes to be threatened to. So that's a skill that has to be learned. So we have to give children, number one, start, even if their start as early as 2.5, 3 years old. Let them put their dishes in the sink. Okay, let them set the table. Give them a chore list, a responsibility list, but do it together with them. Okay, or just start out slowly, like you're doing housework, and ask them for their help. You help them as early as they are. It's actually fun for them, the little ones. Yes.
So I have a question. What happens when they're 11 and you do the chores when they were I mean, now I'm at this point where, like, I don't know if I motivate them with money, allowance money. Do I motivate them with, it's just part of helping the family? But it is a tough job when they're older.
Yeah. There could be a lot of, it is definitely tougher, and also you see also very defiant when you actually ask him to do something. In general?
Twins, so when you say that, it's hard for me.
Okay.
I have 11-year-old twins. Yes, he is. I wouldn't ask him.
Okay.
She is not.
Okay, so the other one is more compliant. Okay.
Yes, so she ends up taking the both of them. Anyway, I don't want
No.
to.
That's
I'm just trying all these different systems, but it's difficult also.
What's your name? Do you mind waiting a little bit? Because I would like to actually I'm sure we have some time later, and I'm going to give you like a better picture and also give you some tips how to do that. Okay, you're welcome. And feel free to call me out on that, okay? I just wanted to get through this very quickly, just give you some tools, and then I'll help you to figure that out. So ask for them, let them help you cook a meal. This not only teaches them to take responsibility, it also makes them feel good, right? They contribute and they're a member of the family. We want to create teamwork at home, right? There's usually, I don't see a lot of teamwork when I go to families' homes. Everybody's doing their thing, and the one is defiant, the other one does it. It gets very, very confusing. So again, and like I said, I'm going to talk a little more in detail about this once we're getting through this list here, and I'll teach you how to actually set boundaries, make agreements, and also come up with some logical consequences. The other thing that can do with overparenting that we can create is a lack of self-confidence. That's really sad when you think about that. It says overparenting can often lead to a lack of self-confidence. This is incredibly heartbreaking because these children may never get to realize their full potential due to the self-doubt instilled in them. Hovering over your children, correcting every move, and never allowing them to figure things out on their own can lead to a feeling that they are not capable or competent enough to handle life's challenges without assistance. The lack of self-confidence can hold them back in many areas of their lives now into adulthood. Allow them to figure things out even if it takes longer. Yes?
I just read this article yesterday that I was horrified that there's a new job of concierge parent, concierge mom, and it's for college kids. The parents are hiring these concierge moms in the city where they're, like, say they live in California and they go to school in New York. They hire somebody in New York for between $49 and $299 a month to be like, if they need a doctor or if they need like groceries or whatever, they have this pseudo mom in the city to take care of them. And I was absolutely appalled, saying, how are these kids ever going to grow up if these parents think that they're going to send their kids to college and they cannot do anything for themselves and they still need a mom around? It was horrifying. So That is what we do not want.
Yes, thank you so much. Which I actually would love to see that. Do
it
you mind
was
sending it to me?
terrible.
Do you mind sending
I'll
it to
try
me
to find
later?
it.
That would be awesome.
But it's like this new business, concierge
Yes.
parent, concierge
Oh my
mom. I'm like,
goodness.
you've got to be kidding. And it's a big business. People are making a lot of money.
My best.
Oh wow,
Terrible.
that's so sad. you
It's
know.
terrible.
It is. Well, that I agree with you. I would love to have one too, but. Oh God. Gonna have a concierge the rest of their life, right?
Yeah.
Somebody has to cater to them. So sad. And how it's not only affect them, how it's affect their relationship, their partner. And then they pass it on to their kids, right? And they all get damaged. It's just a detrimental consequences. It's unbelievable. So we can all avoid that. Yay! Now we just have to start early. So just use, and when you give them something to figure out, use encouragement. Use the right encouragement. That's why I gave you the handout, with what the pearls of praise are. So don the praise, use the encouragement, and ensure them you can do this. And I suggest to parents sometimes, you don't want to try this out in the morning when you're in the rush. Let's say they can't figure out to put on their shoes, or they want you to get dressed. Practice this on the weekend. We have some help. Kind of like even talk to your partner so you can support each other with this. Just walk away. First tell them, I understand. This seems challenging to you, but I have faith in you. You're going to figure this out. Walk away. And even if they whine for an hour, let them figure it out. Okay? The other one is, what it can create is lack of self-worth. So we must resist the temptation to judge and criticize our children, to really accept them for who they are. Continual fault finding is a surefire way to create questions about self-worth in children, and it creates a lack of resilience. Additionally, children who are consistently criticized will start to wonder about their relevance. So I mentioned earlier, instead of criticizing and just focusing on the negative, find the good things in them. And even if it's just a fine looking, I always remember that example. Focus on the effort. Focus on what they're already doing well. Before you want to put out any criticism, make sure you encourage them at least 5 times. Just by doing that, you will see like your kids will be more cooperative. Because what happened, like for example, in your case, it's when children are not cooperative or they don't want to do it, we tend to focus on the negatives, we criticize them, right? Sometimes we're not even noticing that we're doing this. So if we keep doing this, then there will be even less chance for him to be willing to help you, right? So it's all about conscious parenting, reflect sometimes. I said, okay, how is my relationship with this child? And so often I ask parents, this is the first question you want to ask yourself if you have a child that's misbehaving a lot. And there might be something off in the relation. You might feel like you have a good relationship, but then often we're not aware of when we tend to focus on the negatives more than the positives. We also want to make sure that we're spending enough time with them, right? I'm talking about quality time, not just having a talk in the car. That experts say you have to spend a minimum of 12 to 15 minutes a day with a child, which is not really a lot. It's a minimum, okay, to fulfill that basic need. But this 15 minutes I'm talking about, it has to be 100% phone away, everything. It's supposed to be all about the child. Be in their world. Ask them what they would, maybe play a game with them or discuss with them what makes them feel loved and valuable. Right? No distractions, 100%. Very, very important. Because if that basic need for attention is not met, not only feel like they're not valuable enough, lowers their self-esteem, and on and on and on. They take it out into the world, and guess what happens there? They will get their need met, but guess how? We don't want to get into this. There could be all kinds of different ways to get that basic need for attention met, right? All the wrong places. So you want to give them that, you want to make sure that basic need for attention is met at home. Okay? And it's not like you can even spend, I remember a book I read over 20 years ago when I was studying all this. It's written by Dorothy Briggs, was about your child's self-esteem. And one particular sentence was always stuck with me. She said, you can spend all day with your children unless you spend like at least the minimum of quality time with them. It's like no attention at all. So if you spend with more than one child, it's not what I'm talking about. The 100% has to be individually, one child at a time. And it's interesting, I had this new client yesterday, I was just talking to the parents without the children being there. And I asked them, I said, do you feel like you're giving each other 100% attention at least like 12, 15 minutes a day? They look at, I don't think so. So sad. Because not only children have those basic needs, we have those basic needs as well. If you partner, and you want his attention or her attention and say, oh yeah, not now, how does it make you feel? You're not valuable enough. And if that happens a lot, can you see like how you get more frustrated, you build more resentment, and then on top of it, so many other, we're not listening to each other. You can make in less than a minute, you can make a child or even an adult feel valuable, make them feel loved, and raise their self-esteem in less than a minute. But you have to give them 100%, right? And because we're always like so busy and distracted with everything. So start using that tools with your kids and your loved ones. Very, very important. You have a much closer relationship. Creates closeness and better behavior. And not even talking about that, it's just they feel valued. You don't want them to feel like a lack of self-worth. I'm not worth it. I'm not valuable. Just think about the consequences later in life. These are the people that end up in therapy for years, right? So you don't want that to happen. The next one, okay, this one you have is difficulty setting boundaries. When parents are too involved in the child's life, boundaries can become blurred. This is one of the biggest problems for children, parents, and other individuals I've noticed in my practice over the years. Boundaries, boundaries. They constantly prioritize other needs over their own. Do you feel sometimes like you just want to constantly give and you just like you feel like, there's something holding you back from setting boundaries? Out of fear of maybe disappointing or out of fear of conflict. These are the two major ones why we usually don't set boundaries. There's an underlying fear. Can you see that? Or you had a bad experience as a child. Maybe when you did speak up, you got into trouble, right? I was raised like children need to be seen but not heard. That's where, I want you to reflect sometimes on it. So where is this coming from? Why do I have difficulties to set boundaries? Because if we're not aware of it, it's probably not going to happen. It's okay. And you don't have to get into conflict when one of the biggest fears I mentioned is fear of conflict. But there's tools out there. You don't have to get into a conflict to set a boundary. You just have to know how to do that. The example I gave you earlier about the apple juice. Fear of conflict, if you follow through, you say like, okay, if you put the empty can in the trash, you can have apple juice tomorrow again. Let's say the child still decides not to put it in the trash can. The next day he'll ask for apple juice, right? And so now here's the key how to follow through. In that moment, instead of like, I told you, and on, and you can see how often we get into an argument because when they test you. they're going to test you as long as they get their apple juice. And if you've been giving in the past, they know exactly they will get their apple juice no matter what. So the avoidance, not wanting to get into conflict, and you see how we often then we give in, right? This is how it all starts. Because we don't have the skills, number one, to set up the boundary in a kind way and also follow through in a kind way. So if the child asked, let's say he decided not to put it in the trash can, he asked for, so you just, actually I modeled it last night, I was speaking at Beth Montessori last night, and I asked actually a volunteer, and she was testing me with the apple juice, even though I set the boundary, but the first time I modeled to argue with her, right, which is the ineffective way. The second time, because she knew already, but it doesn't mean the kids will still test you, correct? All I was doing is, let's say you would test me, and I'm just going to look at you. And she was trying to test me more. And as I finally said, do you remember your choices? I actually call them choices, not rules or boundaries or anything, because it sounds better, right? Because you have a choice. I presented the choice. If you put it in the trash, you can have apple juice again. So first I was just looking, it already comes, and now it took the wind out of her sail, right? Not engaging. The boundary was set already. There's nothing to talk about. If they forget, you just repeat. You said, okay, yesterday you chose not to put the can in the trash can. You decide not to have apple juice again today. You can try again tomorrow. If the child keeps testing, you just walk away. I'm not willing to argue. End of story. Mm-hmm. Let them have, and if they get the worst tantrum ever, let them have their tantrum. Mm-hmm. And when you start setting boundaries, what happens, I always tell parents, and actually follow through, that's even the most important part, otherwise what's the boundary for, right? They can test you, like, the worst I've seen is like 4 or 5 days. So only because you set a boundary and set it up in a kind way and follow through like I just modeled, doesn't mean they're not going to get a tantrum. But I promise you, if you hang in there, let them have their tantrum. They all of a sudden, it's just not interesting for them anymore because you're not feeding into it anymore. Okay? So this is why I wanted to actually have some handouts. Yes?
Was there any point at which during the tantrum you intervene? I mean, if a child maybe has, I don't want to say a habit, but they develop a tendency, if they get themselves very upset and then they throw up or whatever a child might do in the course of their tantrum. Is there?
In general, so I probably would have to know more why he's doing certain things. However, in general, tantrums, I suggest to parents, let them get it out of their system, okay? In the moment, we cannot teach them anything. Of course, if there's kind of like danger, we need to protect them. The best is actually walking away unless there's a child that likes to be held, just to feel safe in that moment. But you're not going to give in with the apple juice or any other example, okay? If it's usually about testing, like when they don't get their way.
No, it's not really about testing. It's not
Okay.
just like getting very upset and then
What do they get upset about?
some kind of fear usually.
Okay. Probably would have to find out. Maybe if you want to maybe call me sometime and we could talk a little more about that, because it sometimes takes a little more exploring. But if it's about what we're talking about, if it's about testing, then you do want to hold your ground. That's again holding them accountable, right? And you just do it, just walk away. Once you're kind and firm, like when I just looked at her and said, like, presented the choices, am I kind? Yes. And I'm firm because I'm not giving in. So we call it, we want to find the balance. We don't want to be too autocratic and yell and repeat, and we don't want to be too kind by giving in. So we call this being kind and firm. I want you to, just to better understand also, is I made some extra copies, and one of them is, let me see. One of them is understanding parenting styles, and the other one is understanding behavior. Before I go into understanding behavior, I'd like to share with you, since we're talking about like threatening, punishment, and how to get their cooperation, I want you to understand the consequences. So there's not only consequences when we overparent children. There's also consequences how we respond in other areas, like when it comes to cooperation or we give in. So I want you to be aware when I like to read this to you, is that understanding parenting styles. Everybody has their copy. It says child's reaction to punishment. They become liars. They start blaming. They're irresponsible. They're fearful. They're confused. Child pleases or resists authority figure. Low self-esteem, lack of trust, desire for revenge, anger displaced on younger siblings, uncentered children, sneakiness. It's an external control again because we're in charge. And it teaches child what to think. And again, as I mentioned earlier, a child who gets punished, it creates more anger, more resentment, and it does not teach them to take responsibility for their behavior. I had a check mark on all of them when I was growing up, especially the lying up. I was so afraid of my dad because it creates fear, right? Punishment creates fear. I started lying because I didn't want to get into. Why would I tell I was a smart kid, right? Why would I tell my parents the truth? I mean, and then we wonder, right? Kids are lying, they're blaming, they're irresponsible. So we have to become aware of those things to be more effective. And the child's reaction to permissiveness, there's freedom without order, lack of respect, lack of self-confidence, lack of concern for others. Child doesn't learn the value of contributing, lack of self-discipline and focus, questions whether or not they're loved. Then there's another one. It's also an external, they're all external motivations, like praise. Child's reaction to rewarding, expects and demands that others should make him or her happy, looks for the next reward, lack of concern for others, looks to please authority figures, develops the attitude, what's in it for me? We don't want to do rewards either. Because especially I see sometimes parents reward their children for good behavior. I'm not getting rewarded when I behave well. It's, what are they learning? Yeah, it's just only they learn I only have to behave when I get something for it. No, they need to learn it because this is, being a respectful human being. So that's why we have to give them responsibility, set those boundaries, come up with consequences. So they learn if a child, for example, speaks disrespectfully to me or any other adult as well, all those tools work with adults as well. It's great. If an adult speaks disrespectfully, in the past I would have been disrespectful back. They're reacting, oh, I'm going to show him, you don't treat me like that. Today I say I don't really appreciate the way you're speaking to me right now. When you're ready to be respectful, come and get me. I remove myself from the situation. Sometimes parents ask me, what is the punishment if the child is disrespectful? See, again, if we punish them, you go to your room or give them a timeout when they're disrespectful, what are they learning? Number one, somebody else will solve my problem, right? And you actually doing the same as they're doing. They're respectful, they're the child, we have to remember this, we're the model. If we yell at them back or reactive, what are they learning? To be reactive and disrespectful, right? So they must have picked it up from somewhere. Remember, we're the model. 95% children not learning by not what you tell them, but what you model. So we don't have to use the punishment, just set boundaries. And boundaries for yourself, especially when it comes to respect. Right? When I say, I'm not okay, I'm using an I statement, I avoid shame, blame, criticism. Right? I'm making it my problem because it is my problem. I don't like to be around people that are speaking disrespectfully to me. So I just set a boundary. I said, I'm not okay. Are you ready to be nice? I'll come and speak with you. End of story. If they keep whining and listen, just walk away. And if that means in the beginning, maybe you have to lock yourself into the bedroom.
I do that anyway.
And so what we want, I know we only have so much time today. What we really want to create is a child's reaction to redirection is like the firm and kind. Look at this. This is what we want. Looks for happiness within. Respects self and others. Consideration of others. Is assertive. Internal value setting. Cooperation. Looks to do what's best for the situation. Trust. High self-esteem. Peaceful and calm child. Internal control. Self-motivated. Learns from experience. Make responsible decisions. Teaches child how to think. Remember, the way we respond to a child's behavior influences them now into adulthood. That's why I have, if you want to learn more about, how you like to see your child now and into adulthood, I would highly recommend take the 4-week online class, because that gives you a much bigger picture on how to establish that. We can't answer all your questions here right now. But I want you to go, coming back to the power struggles and being defiant, I promise you I'm going to get back to that. I want you to go to the handout where it says understanding behavior and changing our beliefs. When children are misbehaving, something very important I want you to understand is, when children are misbehaving, they're trying to communicate something to you. What they're trying to communicate are actually basic needs. There was the first big aha moment for me when I studied parent education, and then it's like, okay, what are those basic needs? We're all familiar with general, like food, shelter, love, but there's one particular basic need. I've been doing this for over 20 years now. There's maybe 2 people in the whole history, including counselors and pediatricians. They don't come up with that basic need, power and control. When it comes to defiance and wanting to get cooperation in children, we must understand that basic need and accept that is a basic need. And if that basic need for power and control is not met, I promise you, they will get it met, but usually in an inappropriate way. And when I explain to you how that looks like to get in an inappropriate way, which is defiance usually. Because what happens, let's say a child is very young, say 2 years old. That's often when the defiance starts, right? And you're asking a child, I want you to pick up your toys or something like this. And they say no. And then what we often do is keep repeating, right? It's just kind of like the general pattern. We repeat. And then if they still don't do what we're asking them to do, we start raising our voice. And if they still don't do what we're asking them to do, we often threaten with punishment. Right? So that's the regular pattern. Once you react, something very interesting that a little person, like 2-year-old person, learns, it's more on a feeling level, not on a cognitive, because they don't understand what's really going on. They have no clue. They don't even know that they misbehave. All they actually feel is, oh, if I get those people around me upset, it makes me feel really good. It makes me feel empowered and in control. So from now on, I'm just going to make myself feel good. I'm going to get those people around me upset. This is when it all starts. And that's why most people still get into arguments today. Based on that feeling, we make feeling level decisions, not really understanding what happens. So that 2-year-old makes a feeling level decision, oh, I get other people around me upset, that makes me feel empowered. So we're learning to get a basic need for power and control met to get others upset. Isn't that crazy? And we take this into adulthood. Did you know that arguments are really, they're not about the issue, they're about winning. I mentioned this earlier. You know that. It takes 2 people to argue. And in the past, I remember my past relationship before I started all this. I was always blaming the other person. I always wanted to be right. I had to be right because I didn't know any different. I learned this as a 2-year-old. That made me feel empowered. That's how I got my basic need for power and control met. with a very controlling father. Maybe it saved my life, right? Because I was the only one in the family who was speaking up to my dad, even though I knew I would get into trouble. Talking about a strong-willed child. And I never, unfortunately, had a really good relationship with my dad. Even though I learned later, I didn't get into arguments with him anymore. When I learned all this, it's just what a waste of time and energy, right? You're not even solving anything. The only thing it does is strains relationships. And it goes downhill from there. So we must understand that basic need for power and control first. There's a lot of other basic needs, and we won't have time to talk about it, but I wanted to touch and give you some examples, okay? What you can maybe do in this moment. There could be also, parents sometimes want a quick answer. And I can give you a lot of quick answers, but sometimes maybe there's some other basic needs they're not met, they need to be explored. Okay? Yeah.
Sorry, it's really quick, but he's been defiant from the time in school. I mean, truly, absolutely, he showed defiance.
Yes.
I believe he's going with it. I know a lot of it is
Probably right.
too. Do you think some people are just born with that defiance?
Sometimes, these children, we call them, they're more.
They're what?
They're more kind of like strong-willed. Would rather use the word maybe very strong-willed. They want their way all the time. Every word is no, right? And I have a few clients I'm actually working with them, and it's even more important to learn some of those tools, because what they're communicating, I want you from now on understanding the basic need. When the child defies you, don't see them as, oh my God, they're so stubborn. We always focus on the negatives. They're stubborn, they can't help it, and on and on and on. I want you to actually challenge to do a little paradigm shift here today. When your children are misbehaviors, defiance, or anything else, I want you to start seeing them through different eyes, more like, what are they trying to communicate here? What basic need are they trying to communicate? When they defy you, it's usually what they're feeling more. They don't understand. They don't come to you and say, Mom, you're not fulfilling my basic need for power and control. But that's what's really happening. But they learn as a very young age already, born or not, is just even more strong-willed. So it's even more important to understand that and empower them more in an appropriate way. We keep feeding into it by reacting, so he keeps, we actually intensify the whole process, and they will just want to try to get other reaction, because that's how they learn to get, the good feeling of feeling control. And I agree with you, some children are born more strong-willed. Sometimes it's 10 times more than the average child. We also call them sometimes spirited children. There's actually a book written about that. So we have to accept that. However, it doesn't mean we can't do anything about it. So we can empower children by put them in charge of something. It's a little more difficult to if you start early, that's why it's so important. Give them responsibilities. Let them help you. Let them use the word, oh, you're the boss, you're in charge of this. That empowers them. Okay? Make them feel valuable. Ask for them, hey, should I wear black pants or jeans today? Assuming you're okay with that. Otherwise don't ask. But can you see when we ask them, they feel like, oh my God, my mom is asking me for advice. That's so cool, that makes me feel good, right? So that's one part. And the other one is knowing how to learn how to set up boundaries or make agreements with your children, especially when it comes to maybe responsibilities or chores. So what we usually do is, and there's actually when you take the online class, we're spending in session number 4 a lot of time about conflict resolution, peaceful conflict resolution, and go through all the steps. So there might be maybe a good idea for you to take the whole class and get all the tips, because now he's how old? 10? 11. Wait until he's a teenager.
No, like that.
Okay, good. Yeah, start now. You have to have those conflict resolution skills. And what they do, talking about a way to empower someone, we tend to always tell children, you do this. You know, again, they don't want to listen to you. So, like, for example, I would say, what was your name again? Tracy, let's say you're my child and would like to get your cooperation. Just going to give you an example. I said, Tracy, first of all, you have to make sure good timing. Don't try to solve it when you're already upset. Waste of time and energy. When I think about all this energy I could have saved and time, don't argue anymore. Doesn't solve the problem, right? So I would say, Tracy, there's something I would like to share with you. Is now a good time? Could say no or yes. If the person says no, I said, when would be a good time? So you said a time. So timing is crucial. Then the next step could be like, you know, there's really something I could use you. Often we start the conversation, you, right? So I'm just making it my problem here. Now I got your attention, right? And then you basically, I would share how I feel. Said, you know, I get really frustrated sometimes when I could use some help. I really would like for you to help me out a little more. Okay. Make it your problem. What I see a lot, parents, especially when it comes to chores, we don't tell them how it affects us. And we just say, like, you do this, you do this, you do this. I can't believe, and then criticize, and then punish, and on, it just goes downhill, right? Gets worse. But if now I am inviting you, number one, to listen to me and asking for help, because you say, you know what, I feel so exhausted sometimes, I really could use your help. And I remember, I like to share a funny story with you. It's been years ago when I went to this family's house, and the 10-year-old almost sounded like you sound. Completely refusing to do anything. Until I kind of like, you know, we were talking a little bit about it, and I knew like he was like so resistant. And then when I asked everyone, including the parents, I said, take out a blank sheet of paper, and I want everyone to write down what their responsibilities are. And then the kid, like I was helping him a little bit. I said, what do you do? Yeah, I go to school and this, which is not really part of responsibility, right? So I kind of like educated him a little bit. I said, what are you helping out with? And he's just kind of left with like 2, 3 things on his list. And then he saw his parents, the list like get longer. And he all of a sudden says like, oh, I get it. Never forget that. Said, I get it. I guess my parents need some help. Kids are not even aware of all the responsibilities you have. That's what I mean, like make it your problem. So I really could use your help. But again, he still resists, like I don't want to help. So first you express how you feel and what you want. Then give him a chance to say, I would say to, let's say Tracy, you, my daughter. So Tracy, how do you feel? What do you want? So you listen. Listening skills are very, very crucial too, because if we don't listen, if we don't get a chance to share, you know, who knows what the reasons could be. Could be sometimes a simple fix. If we let each other express how we feel and what we want, you actually get to know the other person. And I find often when I do this, or coach the parents and their kids, or even adults with each other, it's something completely different actually. They thought it was the problem. So then you would express, even if you say like, yeah, you know, I understand, Mom, you don't want me to help, but I don't really want to help. Let's say the worst case scenario, okay? So then I would say, look, Tracy, I understand, always validate, don't get into a fight, listen. Listen, it's not about giving advice or on and on. It's about just hearing. I hear you. You don't have to agree. You say, I don't agree with this, right? But I can listen. So look, if you decide not wanting to help, then I have to come up with some solutions. So that's always like where you get, now you can put your foot down. Okay. So then you can start setting boundaries. For example, if a child is totally refusing, often if you approach them like this, you'll be surprised you do conflict resolution with them, right? So it would take too long to get into this right now, but let's say if they don't, I would say, like I said, look, I really want you to help me out with this, unless you have any other ideas. Always empower them, right? Or maybe even give them a list. Say, okay, would you be willing? But if they still don't say like, so look for incentives. They're probably allowed to do screen time or all kinds of different things. So said, okay, if you help out, then you can have your screen time. That's just one example. I'm going to have to wrap this up here soon. So, but I wanted to see for you, there are solutions out there, and I'm hopefully maybe take the 4-week class or call me. I'll give you some other how to really do conflict resolution, because when we learn this skill, that the kids get empowered, because then the decision comes from them. And then we make an agreement, and then at the very end, we're coming up with a logical consequence. Because if we don't know how to come up with logical consequences, often the agreement is not even useful. It's that we fall back, right? So that's just a little example I wanted to give you. We can just go from there. I know it could go on and on and on and on and on. I hope you enjoyed this little workshop here today. You know, you can go back to your old ways of parenting, or you can start now and start using some of those new tools. Remember, we do influence a child's personality now into adulthood. If you need extra help, I'm here for you. Just call me. There is help out there. Either a seminar or call somebody else. If you don't like me, just please get help. Also, I would love for you, I think almost everybody signed in. If you like, additional content, I'd be happy to put you on my email list, invite you to some other events, etc. And please share this with other parents, because I can't do this all alone. It takes a village to create more peace and harmony in this world. So even share this with your pediatrician. I see a lot of pediatricians, they don't have the resources. Or pass it on. This is also a great way when I send you emails with information, forward it to others, post it. It's because you children grow up with those other children who don't have those skills, right? The world will be a better place. And I know it seems a lot to learn at first, but imagine like when we don't do this, any expert will tell you 5 minutes prevention will save you 15 minutes of trauma. Add this up every day over the years. It's a lot of time and energy. And thanks for all you do to make the world a better place. Like you being here today shows me already awesome parents. I wish there would be more parents like this and just taking the time out of their busy schedules. But this is, only a one-time chance. You can't redo this, right? So start now, so they won't experience those consequences. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Quick question. We have like 2 minutes.
You want me to send out? Someone will send out the handout. Sure.
The ones that we missed, yes. I
Or
will.
just this whole.
What you got here?
Oh, sure. What?
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Yes, I can sit. Yes.
Great.
And this will be on our YouTube channel, so you can have people. We did record it, so anybody can watch it.
Wonderful. Share it with other people as well, if that's possible. I don't know if somebody can. Is it actually on the regular YouTube or only on your website?
No, it's on our Del Mar Pines YouTube channel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I don't know if
we
you
have
can
it
put it out in the universe.
No, it's not in the, well, it is, it's public, but you have to go into our site, so you
Okay.
can't, it's not just like advertising.
Okay.
If you go to Del Mar Pines School,
Okay.
then it'll be there.
Okay.
So you have to know where to look.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, and, can I just tell you guys one funny thing? So I'm doing all the kindergarten admissions right now, and so I always have the kids draw a family picture, and it cracks me up sometimes when I always say, oh, who's this person? It's my mommy. What does mommy like to do? She likes to either clean the house or cook or take care of them. I'm like, yes, but even starting that young, let them know, like, cleaning house is not my favorite thing to do, but I have to do it because this family needs it. And that's where, she's talking about giving them responsibilities. Like, you can pick up, you can wipe down the counters, like giving them things to not let them think, like, that's kind of sad if the kids think that your favorite thing to do is clean the house is not necessarily what you want them to think is your favorite thing. So I think it just ties in, like, start at the beginning of having them help you. It's like, and I think you can tell them, you know what, cleaning house is not my favorite thing, but it's something that we need to do every Sunday or whatever. And we're going to spend 2 hours, and everybody's going to have a job, and everybody's going to help to be able to do these things, or laundry, or cooking, or whatever it is. These are such easy things, and these are life skills. They cannot go off in this world without knowing how to do these basic things. So it's.
You can hire a concierge.
I know. Yeah, you're gonna have to be really rich and pay people to do these things, or you have to do it yourself. Like, these are just things that they need to know how to do.
It's strange too, because I think a lot of us were brought up doing chores and doing things for ourselves. So how do we become parents to enable our children?
It's a skill.
Because a
we
lot
have
of
to
us
learn.
think that we can, and that our kids are so busy, and we need them to have time for school or sports or all these other things. We're prioritizing other things in their lives. And it's like, these are the most basic things. You have to do these things in order to be a successful human being. And I think that's where the doing too much for the kids pays off. Some of us, we do have the time, or we do have the money to be able to do these things. It doesn't mean that's good for them. It doesn't mean like you're helping them. So I think to go back, turn it around, and like, we're a family, we need help, we have chores, you got to do these things. And go back to when you were maybe not quite as fortunate as your kids are. It's like this, there's some good things about not having everything.
And I don't pay my kids to do chores. You guys suggest, like, I know a lot of, because Devin gets upset with me, like, how come I don't get paid, my friends get paid? And I'm like, I don't know.
Because you're part of the family, and this is what we need to do.
Yeah,
Why?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. If they want to do extra chores or something,
Yeah.
just they can earn extra money, but there's certain amount of chores
Yeah,
that just need
things
to
like
be.
washing.
Yes.
Because my kids used to want money. It's like, well, you can wash my car. You can do the gardening. Like, find something. But cleaning up your room and doing the dishes, that is just taking out the trash. Those are normal things that we're not paying you for.
Right. Exactly.
So, anyway, thank you guys all for being here. You have great kids, but they can even be better in the future to be able to do all these things.